Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Village of Bronxville Board of Trustees meeting for September 12th, 2022. Do I have a motion to open our meeting?
So,
And a second.
second.
All those in favor? Aye. All righty, and I just ask all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, tonight we start with our usual mayor's comments, and I just want to mention a couple of things not to forget. It was 9/11 yesterday, 21 years, and they did a really nice town-wide ceremony at Eastchester Town Hall. So just not to forget that day. Saturday, the 24th, our Bronxville Public School is having its 100th anniversary celebration, and they have you can go on their website. They're offering tours of the school, lectures, etc., and they just inviting the whole community to join in the celebration. And just to mention one of our wonderful merchants, Maison Rouge, celebrated 20 years of business in Bronxville. So that just says so much about their business, and I wish everyone else a milestone like that in Bronxville. And just to catch people up, I will be writing my column this week just about all that we're doing or was done this summer in the village. I just want to say a huge thank you to Village Administrator Palmer, our police department, and our public works department, because I have never seen in my tenure a summer so busy. We had the water company here, Con Ed here. We scheduled everything that we possibly could during the summer months when some folks are away in the village. So we worked on the West Side Circle. People are going to see some, frankly, some really better traffic flow on the west side. We're working on upgrading the playground at Sagamore Park. Our big project is the Pondfield Midland and the Pondfield Gramerton Avenue. Again, upgrades to the traffic signals to make it even more walkable. You know, our big push, so many of these projects, is our overarching goal of more walkability in the village. For folks, we also did repairs to the paddle courts. We're doing street striping. Bacon Woods, we put in a sprinkler system. We're working on the staircase there. We continue with the cleaning, televising our drainage basins. Basically, this summer was to work on infrastructure in every corner of the village. And I will detail these projects probably in 2 or 3 columns, but I just wanted to give the residents who might be listening a heads up on all that you saw going on this summer, because, as I say, it was the busiest summer I've seen, and all positive and all needed.
And the first season of pickleball.
And the first season of pickleball. Though there was an article in the Times, was it, about we got to be careful of our pickleball injuries. There's new kinds of injuries. Also, for just bookkeeping, we are, our planning board chairman Gary Reitz has actually moved to Switzerland, and he served this village so well and for so many years as chair of the planning board, and we all thanked him personally, but I want to give him a public thank you. And with Gary's departure, Larry Vranka is going to move up to planning board chairman, and Michael Goldman will move up to vice chairman. And that is my report for September. Mr. Palmer, village administrator's report.
Mayor, now, I think you started going through some of the projects. I'll just say I appreciate everyone's patience with the projects over the summer, especially those residents and neighborhoods that were impacted with the continuation of the installation of the Con Ed's gas line down Midland. I think this is the third year of that phase of the gas line down Midland, but we were able to get Willow and Hawthorne repaved before the start of school. And everyone might have noticed on Midland, we did some additional striping also, like we had done on the southerly side, something that the board will discuss at a future work session, considering a biking lane on the northerly side of Midland under the Safe Routes to School program that we've been working on. So just wanted to thank everyone for their patience. Con Ed work is done. We do still need to pave Locust and also Wood End, as well as Greenfield. And the board has been deliberating extending sanitary sewers down Wood End Lane. So that's one of the reasons that we've been holding off on paving Locust and Wood End Lane. But we will have those Locusts especially paved before paved certainly by the fall. Otherwise, the village's paving of other streets will be done in the coming weeks. We're scheduling those as we speak.
Right.
So we will use our emergency notification system to reach out to residents in the individual neighborhoods, letting you know when the paving is going to be taking place. Just wanted to emphasize that. And then, of course, yes, a reminder to everyone for the work at these two intersections we did mention in the newsletter here at Pondfield and Midland, as well as Gramerton and Pondfield. There are new overhead signals that are being constructed, and they'll be actually working on some of the sidewalk work over here at Midland tomorrow, just after the kids settle in. But the goal was to get all the footings and the underground utilities in over the summer, which they had successfully done. And of course, we don't have an arrival date for the mast arms and the overhead signals, but that'll probably likely be over the winter. But if all the other infrastructure is in place, then they can put those in when that equipment arrives. And yeah, it was, yeah, honestly, just a very busy summer. A lot of it still in the works, as you mentioned, with the west side improvements. The board does temporary improvements with the bollards and the striping, and we follow how the traffic patterns work. Already some of the residents that I met with earlier today noticed the no left turn out of Lennon Mirage, and that was something that we had talked about and residents had brought up. So right now it's just noted no left turn out of Lennon Mirage with the bollards, which we've done in-house with the great work of the DPW, but eventually we'll make that with a mountable curve as a permanent improvement.
And Jim, for that, if residents do want to go left coming out of the train station, they can go around the circle and go back around.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yes, just emphasizing, appreciate everyone's patience, and work continues. And with the playground equipment, I do still have to arrange for, we had some sketches that Steve and I will arrange for a meeting with our core group, Helen, of residents that express an interest in it, so we can go over different types of equipment. And I envision that being perhaps a series of phases, starting out with, say, the 6-month-old to 5-year-old group, and that lower area is potentially phase 1, but we can, but we'll be able to discuss that. I'm thinking if we are able to solidify that over the course of the fall, pick out the equipment. Again, it takes about 5 months once you order it. Then we could have the equipment perhaps installed as early as or start the installation in the spring as soon as the weather turns, so. That's it, sir.
Okay, and trustees, anyone have anything? I'm sure I missed something, so does anyone want to mention anything?
I just have one, since the weather looks like the end days of summer, we might as well enjoy it. The last Chamber of Commerce summer concert
That's right.
is this Thursday at 6:30 on Park Place, so it should be a nice evening.
Perfect.
Trustee Behrens, go ahead.
Talk about the bronze accreditation?
Oh, I was
Well,
hoping,
Helen could talk about it.
yeah.
Are you going to mention it, Jim, or at all? Or
You, go
We'll lead
ahead.
in it, yep.
Well, I honestly, all, the, the village has, after many, many months of extremely hard and dedicated work by Stephen Shallow here and members of the Green Committee, Ellen Edwards and Carol Upshur and Maria, the village has achieved its bronze designation from the Climate Smart Communities board, which is really a huge achievement, I have to say. I have to think we were one of the quickest from where we started to when we ended, because some communities take years to put it all together. So a big round of virtual applause to everybody who did that. So I think that puts us in good stead for future grant monies for green projects, and keeps us all thinking of ways to further improve our commitment to green projects in the village and keep our community clean. And onward to silver.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, Trustee Barrett?
No, I'm good.
Yeah.
Just a couple of quick items. Having formerly worked as, with the zoning board and chair of the zoning board, it was really my great pleasure to have more interactions than many with Gary Reitz, and we all wish him all the best in his new abode, but he really had a long and, I think fair to say, distinguished tenure as chairman of the planning board. So thank you, Mayor, for noting that. I also want to thank Jim Palmer, as we all do, and Steve Shallow. It has clearly been an immensely busy summer again, as the mayor mentioned, and I'm just dazzled as a relative newcomer to the board at how seamlessly the village seems to work. The only other item I wanted to mention was that last Thursday there was a program organized by the Reformed Church on the problem of gun violence, and Trustee Behrens, Trustee Underhill, and I both attended. We had occasion to thank our congressman for participating in that forum, and Mayor Patterson of Mount Vernon, who also attended, and I think was quite an impressive person. I had not heard her speak before, but I think all the trustees had a chance to welcome some of our neighbors and congressmen to the village and appreciate them for showing up. And in that regard, just wanted to thank our own officer, Nicholas DeYoung, Sergeant Nicholas DeYoung, for being a panelist on that program. And unsurprisingly, he acquitted himself most professionally and most well on behalf of the village. I think Trustees Behrens, Underhill, and I were all had occasion to be proud again of Sergeant DeYoung's contributions, and glad to have him on the force.
Perfect. Thank you. All righty, then I will go on to approval of the minutes. And again, Mary Ann, you outdid yourself. This is marathon minutes. We had so many meetings. Thank you. So I need a motion to accept the minutes from an executive and a work session of June 13th, a regular meeting of June 13th, a special meeting of July 22nd, and a special meeting of August 17th. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I just have,
Yeah, so I had, as amended, because I had given Mary Ann a few changes to the June meeting that I noted
Right.
to you all. So could we say as amended?
As amended,
Yeah.
that's much better.
Trustee Burns, was one of those amendments in the mayor's report, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yes.
5? Yeah, I think that should be Pride Month period, and then as former President Obama said, every person, no matter who they are. I think, we thank you. I'm using an absent person's mic, I
Get
apologize.
that, Marianne? I'm sorry.
I think June is also, there's a new sentence that begins, June is also designated as Pride Month. I think there should be a period after month, and then a new sentence, as former President Obama said.
And those pride and month should be capitalized.
And then Trustee Fredericks, I added when we talked about the Safe Streets meeting that it just says Trustee Fredericks, but Trustee Behrens and Jim Palmer were also there participating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also with respect to the Lawrence, NYP Lawrence, which is now NYP Westchester.
Right.
Which had a name change, that the mayor hosted the lunch and I was in attendance. And that was just missing from the minutes.
Thank you
That
all.
Mary got those earlier, Mary Ann.
All right, so then, good point. I need a motion to accept the minutes as so amended by the trustees.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We accept all 4 sets of those minutes. Thank you, Mary Ann. In a departure from our usual process of saving public comment to the end of the meeting, I see that we have some residents here. So frankly, out of deference to your time, if anyone is here to talk about any of the new business on our list, save for the 2 items talking about scheduling public hearings, you're welcome to come up now. So if you would just kindly tell us who you are and perhaps your address, and talk about whatever you like if it's on tonight's agenda. And then if your comments are just general in nature, we do ask you to wait until we go through the business. Yeah. Hi, how are you?
First time here. Tyler Cunningham, live at 33 Garden Avenue, the townhouses on Garden. On the agenda, it seemed like there was some maybe sewer work that was going to be done on Tanglewild and Garden.
Yes.
And we were just wondering if that would have any impact, positive or negative, on the Meadow and Garden intersection, and just our ongoing concerns around flooding and flood mitigation.
And to answer your question, so that was a sanitary sewer repair at Garden and Tanglewild that's since been completed. It was really considered more of an emergency repair. So really, what's on the agenda is just the board authorizing use of previously bonded monies to complete that repair. However, that being said, I would be throughout the summer, the village has been, and I'd be happy to meet with you one day this week, or even out on site, so we can go over those the issues of Garden. So that was for the sanitary sewer. The repair was completed. That being said, throughout the summer, we have been working on cleaning all the catch basins, televising all the storm lines to look for any obstructions, and that also includes the lines over on the Garden side. We've been trying to maximize not only the use of the village's force main system, but also the existing gravity lines that go from a Garden and Meadow. You might have noticed this summer on the Midland side, where Garden does all eventually drain to, the Cook Contracting was out there with their backhaul truck doing extensive removal of additional debris, something that the village is now doing, given the magnitude of some of these events or potential events, is doing on a much more regular basis. So they also did a lot of work around the inflow to the water storage chambers underneath. So our hope, we anticipate all that's going to have additional benefit to make sure we maximize the capacity of the existing conveyance system, and that includes at the intersection of Garden and Meadow.
But if you would like to, first of all, welcome and thank you for coming.
After 12 years, yeah.
But I mean, thank you for coming to our meeting. And if you would like more really sort of specific neighborhood information, as Mr. Palmer said, come in, give us a call, and we'll show you whatever maps or show you what we're doing in each particular neighborhood.
And to that point, I think some of the concern when there was a potential thunderstorm, I think it was anticipated for a heavy rain event. Now, unfortunately, with the weather forecast, now we hear flash flood with every event. In the case of Ida, we never heard about flash flood. Now, the isolated events, you just don't know where they're going to, where they're actually going to set up. So some of the residents from Garden did reach out to me last Sunday in anticipation of that, and I explained, and this is perhaps something that we need to clarify better, is we continue to work with the school to have the floats within the force main system in the wells as low as possible. The pumps kick on when those floats get to a certain level, but the school also has staff trained on site to be able to activate those pumps in the event that the pumps don't turn on. And the way the system is designed, floats, water gets to a certain level, the floats become activated, they turn on pump number one. If for some reason pump number one does not turn on, the system's supposed to roll right over and pump number two will go on. But if not, as an additional belts and suspenders, the school does have someone on staff that can turn them on. I think there's been some confusion on that, and I did agree to meet with some of the residents over on Garden, so perhaps we can set something up. But again, much of the emphasis summer was to make sure we maximize our existing gravity system, and we've been doing that by cleaning any of the sediment that's in the line, even if it's only perhaps a few inches or 6 inches of sediment, that reduces the capacity of the pipes.
Great. And I did connect with Marianne Palermo and Chris, and Barry's also in the townhouses as well. So we're fairly connected, and our blood pressure goes up every time.
I understand. The email started to flood. I shouldn't use that word, but did start to reach me on Sunday. And I assured everyone I followed up with the school. Someone was on site. Fortunately, the event didn't transpire. But yes, I understand.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for all your time.
Oh, and thank you. Thank you for coming. And anyone else like to? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Steve Zanettos. I live at 2 Duesenberry Road, which is the intersection of Duesenberry and White Plains. Just here to generally voice opposition to the proposed sidewalk expansion and construction, really, between Duesenberry and Paddington. First and foremost is the proposal was made and voted on and approved by the board without even consulting the direct homeowners that are going to be affected. So my property will have a sidewalk running from end to end on White Plains Road. I never got an official notification from the town that it was being voted on or considered. I knew there was sort of a groundswell of, some members of the community that wanted to have a crosswalk, and I certainly understand the rationale for that. But it's my understanding that the grassy curb and maybe some shrubs are going to be replaced by the sidewalk. Technically, that's, I think, state property because it runs along Route 22. But I think another proposal that was recently passed, it will be my responsibility to maintain that sidewalk as well as, snow removal, but also maintenance, which is an additional cost, obviously, to us. I get that when you buy a house and it has a sidewalk, and I've lived in Tuckahoe with sidewalks before, you know your responsibility when you buy that house, you take it on. In this case, my property doesn't have that now. Now it's being sort of imposed on us. So There's going to be an increased operational cost from us for snow removal, maintenance, et cetera. Lastly, there's the liability issue of people are going to be walking, obviously, on this sidewalk. It's state property, yet I presume I would be liable if anything happens on that sidewalk, given that it's my property that abuts it. So I have, increased maintenance, liability, the aesthetics of it as well, which would generally reduce our property value. And the fact that we weren't even notified that it was coming up for a vote kind of irks us. I don't know if I missed anything on that, I can't speak for my neighbors, the Seminaries on one side. Their primary residence is not here. You'll hear from Mr. Smith, who is on the other side of the road and is concerned about the expansion of it from Duesenberry to South Road. But that is our qualm of the day.
Okay. No.
The lack of notification really concerned us because we knew something was potentially going on based on, a meeting that Mr. Palmer had at one of our street corners, but then we heard nothing. And one of our neighbors was like, hey, did you know this recently got passed? And I think today's meeting was to select the contractor. And so it's already been approved, and, I don't know when we were going to hear about it until people, showed up with shovels on our property or next to it. Thank you.
Two things. First of all, most importantly, I personally apologize. We should have reached out to you beforehand, and that was an error on our part. And in a community this small, we should have called you, and I apologize. And we learned a lesson here. And the only other, I totally understand what you're saying. The only other just clarification is as far as sidewalk maintenance, that has been, it would be yours to maintain. That has been the law in the village for 70-plus years, and it's the law in most communities that if a sidewalk is in front of your home, there's certain caveats. You have a certain amount of time to clear it of snow or whatever. That law is not new, but the idea of the sidewalk, we should have brought you in the conversation earlier, and I apologize.
And again, as I said, when I've owned houses before that had sidewalks, I knew my responsibility,
Right.
But it factored into my decision-making what I'm going to pay for the house, how I'm going to maintain it, and the upkeep costs that I know I'm going to have to bear. In this case, it's kind of just being thrown upon us.
I also want to thank you for showing up, and as a trustee very much involved in the process. I join in the mayor's comments that if we were to do it over again, we could have done better outreach. I just wanted to make two observations. One, just so you know, and Mr. Smith knows if you don't already, the original concept was just to get a crosswalk across the street because cars don't stop on Route 22, and
Correct.
it's a dangerous condition. And I became aware during the process that the state will not permit installing a crosswalk unless it crosses to another crosswalk. So I think some of us, when we started the project, actually thought, well, we could just install a crosswalk, and it's Bronxville, people can go on the median or on the verge. But we were advised, and it was reiterated to us on several occasions by state DOT personnel, that it could only be done if there was a crosswalk.
Or a sidewalk, sorry.
I'm sorry, if there's a sidewalk. There's obviously a sidewalk on the west side. There would need to be one on the east side. So I don't know whether that makes you feel better, but that was a prerequisite as a matter of state law for doing it. I'd also say that as someone who's lived on Duesenberry Road in the past and has bought two properties in my lifetime on the far side of the White Plains Post Road, I've been told by my real estate agents, as both a buyer and a seller, that historically there's been a discount for properties on that side of the post road because of its isolation and the lack of connectivity. So it's not a guarantee, but I'm hopeful that in fact this will prove to be a benefit to all the East Siders, so to speak, in that it will connect their properties in a more walkable way to the rest of the village. I don't know that that's the case, but certainly it's our hope that it actually improves everyone's quality of life, even if you as a property owner adjacent to a sidewalk may have some state law additional requirements. But I just wanted to add those comments. And I think if we could have installed a crosswalk without having a sidewalk, that would have been a discussion we would have had, but it was a foregone conclusion. We couldn't, our hands were tied by DOT regulations.
Understood. I think there would have been a lot less concern on our part. The sidewalk is a big issue as opposed to just having a crosswalk. So, and maybe at the point at which we had one of those get-togethers on one of the streets that I think both of you were at probably well over a year ago, the talk was crosswalk and not necessarily a full sidewalk from street to street. So, anyway, thank you for your views and appreciate the time.
Thank you. And again, I think Trustee Fredericks is right. We were under the assumption that we could have a crosswalk and just a crosswalk, which is why the sidewalk requirement came to us much later in the conversation when we realized it was an absolutely necessary prerequisite for that crosswalk. Okay, anyone else yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Justin Smith. Steve just mentioned me. I live across the street from him on Dusenberry, at 1 Dusenberry Road. I just want to say, before sort of saying what I want to say with respect to the sidewalk issue, first of all, kudos to the board for the entire improvement and walkability project. I'm very much in favor of that. I grew up in Manhattan. We moved here 12 years ago. I was terrified of moving to the suburbs, in part because it was just cars, and I appreciated the walkability of Bronxville then. I appreciate it now. I walk all around. And I've noticed right away the improvement to the West Side Circle. I've seen many near accidents there from people trying to take left turns that don't make any sense. More sidewalks, more pedestrian, better. My children have always walked to school from K through 12. In one case, K through 10 in one case, and 6 through 12 in the other. So kudos to you for increasing the walkability. That said, I do share Steve's concerns that he just mentioned, and I appreciate your comments, Mayor Marvin and Mr. Fredericks, both, I guess, first of all, with respect to informing the adjacent homeowners. I'm at 1 Dusenberry, which is on the north side of Dusenberry. So as I understand it now, and I had the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Palmer today, in which he sort of explained the status of things, and as I understand it, the proposed potential sidewalk between Dusenberry North to South Road has not been decided upon, and I would like to comment on that. I did see it referenced to it in the minutes, I think, of April this spring. I actually, unlike Steve, I wasn't even aware of even the informal meetings that went on. The first I learned about any sidewalk abutting Steve and Alexa's property or abutting my property was yesterday or the day before yesterday when I learned from Steve. So I had no knowledge of anything in the works at all. And, we're talking about 2 properties on the Paddington to Dusenberry, and then 2 properties on the Dusenberry to South. So it's not a whole lot of people. And I appreciate that you already said that that's a point taken. The other point I'd like to, where I also share Steve's concern, is the added expense for maintenance not just maintenance and snow removal, but actual repair. And to your point, Mayor Marvin, I understand that it's an old law here. It's not universally the case across the country. It's very common in New York to have, and I grew up in New York City, but believe me, I was shoveling the sidewalks on West 83rd Street as I was growing up. So I'm very familiar with that, but it's not universally the case
Right.
Across the country. And as I understand it, just from a quick perusal of the minutes, there was a sort of a reiteration or reaffirmation, clarification of that law that was passed in the spring or winter to kind of strengthen it, make sure it's sort of clear on the homeowner's responsibilities, which include not just things like snow removal, but if tree roots are under, if, actual repair of the sidewalk then becomes the adjacent homeowner's responsibility. And there's both the liability risk and the increased insurance premiums that you're going to have to pay as a homeowner for any accidents for which you may be found liable with respect to that property. And as someone who rented in Bronxville for the first 8 years that I lived here while trying to save my pennies to actually, purchase a home in a not inexpensive community, it actually can matter to people, those incremental costs. I think we live in a wealthy community. Many people can absorb the costs very easily, but it's something worth considering. The impact on homeowners who maybe have a pretty tight budget given the expenses of living in Bronxville. That said, putting that aside, the concern I have, not really concern, having lived in Dusenberry for a few years now, my son is 10th grade, my younger son now has walked to school, and I walk everywhere. I believe, my wife who's not here believes, that there are many better uses for funds that could be used for sidewalk development than that particular stretch between South Road and Dusenberry. For example, the way my son walks and the way most people I know, most kids I know walk most directly down Elm Rock is Elm Rock to Masterton, right on Masterton, and down to the Crosswalk. That's the most direct line. So when you think about providing a crosswalk, which is it's to Elm Rock, what we all need to think about, and obviously you're charged with thinking about, is not just how do you get across 22, but what are you kind of filtering? What are you filtering people into, right? The crosswalk. There's actually not a crosswalk at Pondfield in 22. There's a light. There's actually not a crosswalk there. And same with the north end. When you look near Concordia at Tanglewild, there's a light. There's not actually a crosswalk. But when you think about the ways that people go from that side, from our side of 22 over, right, the options are pretty much Pondfield, Elm Rock. I need to actually bring my map to remember Hawthorne and Tanglewild. Right, those are, excuse me, not Hawthorne.
Woodland.
Woodland. Right, those are the four. Now, the three most direct, well, they're all direct, but given some of the problems on Masterton, when I was talking with Mr. Palmer earlier today, the way in which people would be encouraged to walk, given the lack of sidewalks on Elm Rock, the lack of sidewalk on Masterton, up from Beechwood to Pondfield, there's no sidewalk, and there's only a not really stroller-friendly piece of sidewalk on Masterton. The way in which people would be encouraged to walk on Elm Rock is basically down Elm Rock, right on Oriole, left on Orchard, right on Studio Lane, left on Hemlock. Right, so it's a bit of a zigzag approach from Elm Rock, and I understand the benefits to people that are living on Paddington, that are living on parts of Course-View, that are living on, what's in the back of Paddington? Ridgecroft, right? All those will benefit from that. The people who live on, sort of south of that, on Fordle, on Manor, on that view, on Course-View, there is no sidewalk whatsoever on Pondfield if you go east of 22. So, we at least have on 22, one side of the sidewalk. There's no sidewalk at all for those people. And for the people that are north, basically on South Road, on Middle Road, on North Road, right, all of them have access to the Tanglewild crossing. Now, admittedly, you might have to walk a block north to then walk back south, so it's a little bit less direct. But given that the way, once you get across at Elm Rock, is not direct either, you're doing this sort of semi-circuitous route that I mentioned, to me, those people are taken care of. So you've got the people that would be potentially using the sidewalk between Dusenberry and South are already kind of taken care of through Tanglewild. I think, and I would submit, that better places to look for sidewalks would be really on Masterton between Beechwood and Pondfield. Just driving to this meeting, there are multiple people on that. Some of them they're all in the road until you get to Beechwood, at which point you can walk sort of the non-really ADA compliant, difficult to stroller on piece. But they're going to use it regardless. And having no sidewalk, there's already a walking path there on what's lawn essentially because of how much use it gets. Other places to consider would be, as I mentioned already, Pondfield east of 22 over to the Country Club Road. And a third one would be I think those are sort of the two best if we're going to, as I think Mr. Palmer suggested, some of the other roads are going to have sort of white striping and sort of pedestrian without actual sidewalks. But I think as far as sidewalks, those would be significantly better. Oh, the last piece is that there's no sidewalk on either side of 22 if you go really south of Sussex, but certainly south of Pondfield. South of Pondfield, there's literally no sidewalk at all on either side of 22. And that could be useful for the people that are coming over from the south of Pondfield and also east. And the sidewalk, such as it is between Sussex and Pondfield, is really not much of a sidewalk, unlike once you go north of Sussex. So I put that out there just for this trustee's consideration as you consider, where best to allocate funds for sidewalk development in the future.
Thank you. And again, personally, we owe you an apology also because we should have reached out to you ahead of time. And I apologize. And as I say, some of it was because we didn't understand all these sidewalk tie-ins to these things. But
I appreciate it very much, Mayor Marvin. The other thing I'll note is that Mr. Fredericks pointed out that the sidewalk was needed on the other side of the crosswalk. Of course, there would be no crosswalk on the north part between Dusenberry and South, so that there's not that need for a sidewalk there. It's more a question of sort of what makes the most sense.
Let me just briefly add a couple of comments, and first of all, I echo the mayor's comments, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. It's always invaluable when we have residents come and express their views. I would note that we have in fact hired a consultant to look at the whole question of safe routes to school for the entire side of the village, which is east of Midland effectively, and that is probably going to be prologue to a review generally of routes to school and routes to the village as well for the west of Midland side of things. I think that review began with, I think, the established fact that the east of Midland side of the village has far fewer sidewalks than the west of Midland side does, and so that raised the question of where to most effectively put routes to school. In looking at routes to school, our consultants, as well as sort of an ad hoc group, have looked not only very carefully at existing practices, but also what our consultants and what our police department believe are the safest and best routes. We can't tell people to take a particular route, let alone teenage kids going to high school. But I think all of us have been motivated by the belief that we want to recommend as a village the route that is the best and is vetted by consultants as the best. People, of course, are free to do what they want, but to the extent that we want to try to encourage people to take a particular route and are going to have this crosswalk at Route 22 that will, if approved, be very close to your property, that is, again, going to be part of a broader route to school. So we have thought about it in terms of routes to school. Mr. Palmer, Trustee Behrens, and I can both provide you additional information about some of that thought process. I think Mr. Palmer can probably make available the consultant's report that we've received on some of that. So I think that in an ideal world, we might want to wave a magic wand and make various improvements. I think it is fair to say that where we are now is in trying to advance what we think is the best, most bang for the buck proposal that we have. When I grew up in the village, before I had any gray hair, there were sidewalks, for example, up and down Woodland, and I walked down sidewalks on Woodland. Passage of time, those are gone. I mean, there's probably a case to be made that it would be nice to have sidewalks back again on Woodland, but this route with the crosswalk in its proposed place, which is equidistant, as you know, between Pondfield at one end and North Road at the other, it seems to us the best compromise and the best bang for the buck solution. And as for extending the sidewalk between Dusenberry and South, again, my personal view, I'll just speak for myself, that will provide a feeder for residents on Edgewood, on Elm, on Forest Lanes, as well as Middle and South Roads, which is clearly a more direct route than having to sort of backtrack up to the Village Lutheran Church and then, go in an area where there are not sidewalks down Tanglewild, for example. So I very much appreciate your thoughts and your comments. I think we've tried to take into account many of the sentiments you've identified, recognizing that reasonable minds might disagree. But I want to assure you that we have at least tried not to do this randomly, arbitrarily, or with undue speed. We have tried to get professional advice, which has certainly informed my thinking, and I think that of others. On the outreach issue, I share my prior comments to your neighbor and the comments of the mayor, if we could have done more, but I think we're all very hopeful and optimistic that in the end this will be a benefit for everyone in that general area of the village, and I hope it will prove to be a benefit to your family as well. But thank you, and I appreciate your views very much.
Thank you. If I could say just one thing in response to what you said about the sort of access from Forest and Elmwood, those sort of places north of South, essentially South, Middle, and North. I agree that going up to Tanglewild would obviously involve a little bit of backtracking before coming around, and a more direct route would be to go to Elm Rock, but only, I think, if you do the Elm Rock to Masterton route. If you're doing Elm Rock and then right on Oriole and then left, on whatever, and then right on Studio Lane and then left on Woodland, you're doing backtracking that way. You're going down and then backtracking north, as opposed to backtracking north and then coming south. And maybe there's some incremental benefit, but I think there might be a little bit more bang for the buck. And I agree, I understand sidewalks everywhere would be great, but to the extent that you're allocating based on best bang for the buck or, where you might get the most traffic, I think there might be better alternatives. I'm sorry.
So I'm sorry, because I actually, in June, sat for an hour during school watching kids go down either to Masterton or down Studio to Hemlock, not all the way to Woodland, like you just said, to Hemlock. And I asked everybody, why are you choosing your right route? And, part of it is because Masterton is that's where most people go, but the people with strollers or the people with dogs or the people with small kids, they tend to go Hemlock. And I said, why? And they said, well, it's equally as fast, and I don't have to worry about, obviously, the sidewalk issue. It's, it's a straight shot down. So it is a little zigzag. It appears zigzag, but to be honest, the time is about the exact same, maybe 1 minute off, depending on, little kids walk a little slower. Those faster ones go down Masterton. So it appears zigzag, but it's really not. It's quite direct.
I live in Dusenberry. I walk to and from the train. I've tried lots of routes. So I take your point. It's not that different. I think it is a little bit different. I'm not sure if it's 1 minute, but I'll take your point.
Okay.
I think that
A couple dads said it was faster, so.
Yeah, I question how much it'll take, to walk the extra block from, say, middle to north,
Right.
or 2 blocks from
Right.
south to
Right.
north, whether that's a minute or 2 minutes.
And then I just wanted the mayor to comment on, you had mentioned a couple times about the intersection at Pondfield and Route 22, White Plains Road, and how that's been in the works for the last 10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Trustee Behrens reminded me that we had asked for that intersection from the state of New York, and it's had its 10th anniversary of trying to get that one. So that's not for want of trying. And I think it's also important, just my colleagues, we did bring in a engineering company, and honestly, I'm hoping this is the first of many more paths, that this is not the end, this is the start, because our big goal is, why people move here, and sometimes why your property is smaller for the amount of money that you pay for it, is that walkability is, we did a comprehensive survey, and maybe a couple of years ago now, and the overwhelming thing was just make it even easier to walk, because this is why we lived here. If we wanted bigger properties, we know we have to be in cars, we moved here. So this is the start. So those other streets have not at all been X'd out. The engineer frankly thought they were the safest currently, and the safest way to start a program. So
I certainly take the point that it will be incremental and
Yes.
And iterative as you sort of go forward. I still do think as a starting point, even as I said, biggest bang for the buck initially, it might be something else. And to the point of Fordle, the people on Fordle could benefit from on the same side of the east side of 22, that gets them to Pondfield and then across. Right now, they don't have any way unless they really walk back to Courceview and around, because there's nothing on the east side of 22 there. There's nothing on Pondfield east of 22. So that piece is a little bit of an island entirely, unlike the south, middle, north side.
May I just make also a general comment that we, as a village, publish a newsletter. It's published by email once a month that, outlines a lot of the things that we've talked about and what we're working on as a trustee body. And for those who want to stay more interested and be more current, I know, yes, we were supposed to, we didn't notify you on this, and we apologize, but just in terms of general work that the village is doing, we outline it fairly clearly in the newsletter, and it's easy to sign up online on the village website for the newsletter, and it just comes in the email. So I would recommend to you and the audience, and also to all the viewers, to continue to sign up for our newsletter, as it's a monthly publication, excluding the month of August.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate that, and I don't think either Steve or I was saying that the information was unavailable, but I'm sure at least some of you have difficulty managing your email inbox as I do, and reading everything that comes in and that you subscribe to. So I'm sure that there's stuff that passes through that maybe I should be able to note better, but I'm not sure that, without any knowledge in advance, that it will directly be applicable to me. Other stuff filters to the top. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight. Okay, I think then we will move forward and just do our new business. First, this is essentially our wonderful assessor, Jerry Gallo, retired, and we now have our wonderful assessor who was Jerry's assistant, and so this is just filling the second and very important seat in the assessor's office. Anything more? Dan has worked, just to give the public a little idea, 30-plus years as an assessor. He was the assessor in New Rochelle and the assistant assessor in the entire town of Greenberg. So he comes with a huge amount of experience, and he also helped us, believe it or not, I don't know what, it's been over a decade, he helped us with our reassessment and did a terrific job for us. So,
Mayor, did you note it was a part-time job?
oh, I did not notice a part-time job.
Professional services, he'll be keeping track of his own hours, but essentially, approximately a day a week, yep, and,
Right.
yep.
And it's to do work that frankly is important, that you need assessing knowledge, but it's also a cost saver, having it be part-time and having it some duties that you don't, the full-time assessor doesn't need to be doing. So it makes a lot of financial sense as well.
Absolutely.
And the idea is that this would be always a one-year contract, subject to renew every single year? Is
Yes,
that the usual
that's the way I
short term?
understood it.
It's a pretty short period of time. I'm just curious as to why that wouldn't be a bit
It's an annual
longer
renewal,
period.
Tim?
That's a good question. Did he ask for it on a yearly renewable? Because trustee Knapp is right, often we do 2 and 3 year, not that 1 year is,
Yeah, I guess I just noted that we can renew it as agreed to by both parties. Well, he would certainly be amenable to extending it, so we could, for that matter,
Well, given it's new, we might want to see, renew it next year.
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
But I mean,
think
to
that's fine, yeah.
trustee Snap, it is slightly unusual,
I mean, just
but,
'cause we don't want to necessarily have to do this every single year. If he's,
Right,
I agree, test period,
Yeah.
a probationary year, but.
I mean, yeah, I think he was absolutely fine with it, but it's up to the pleasure of the board. We could make it 2 years now, it would certainly be amenable to that, or if we want to keep it as the 1 year, and then next year, we can amend that language so that his services continue
I
unless
kind of like the
otherwise.
idea of locking in a price for 2 years, but maybe he doesn't.
You might not.
yeah, that's a good question. We would have to ask him. We can't turn it into a 2-year without consulting him. So I think we have to do tonight the 1 year with
for the
this
1 year,
number,
yeah, fine.
but frankly, with the hope that perhaps you can have a conversation with him and we can, at a future meeting, we could amend the contract.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
Yep,
that-
fine.
Yes. Okay, so do I have a motion authorizing the retainment of Whittemore appraisals?
So moved.
And a second.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then we have our small claims settlements, and these were really, I just applaud Mark Heimbachel, our village assessor, because he kind of took on the toughest ones, the ones that have frankly languished too long, and I thought, which I told him on behalf of all of us, I thought he did a masterful job, not only, I think, fairly settling them, but kind of cleaning the slate of things that sat too long. So I wonder if I have a motion to authorize our settlements, and they cover years 2020, 2021, and 2022 settlements.
So moved.
Yes.
And I'd second, while noting that to put sort of dollars and cents on this, Mayor, as I understand the report, the total amount of settlements would involve a refund to the village and to the school combined of $81,541, which, when looking at the list of all the property values that were at issue at the start, certainly confirms everything you said, Mayor, that this is a very good result. It's a payment of $81,000, but a lot of claims successfully withdrawn from the perspective of the village, and $81,000, I think, is certainly something that we would live with in most years. So I second the motion.
But that's that's much less for the village, 81,000 for the school and the village,
Yeah,
right?
it's only 16,000 for the village,
Yes.
so.
And when you see the list, just so the public know, there's well over a dozen properties. So I think the number is good for us, and I would argue a lot of these homeowners are happy it's settled as well. So I think it gives it's a good message for everyone.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion to accept this?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Are there still then more in the pipeline?
I think he
Or
has.
this is clear?
I think this is,
I think it takes us pretty current.
yeah, I think it takes it back to start, which is
That's,
incredibly
kudos
nice.
to him.
Yeah,
I'm glad you expressed our
yeah.
appreciation.
And, Mr. Palmer, do you want to mention, you were just talking about the wonderful, to me today, the services of our Director of Rackets, Matt Evans. So I'm going to give you this one to mention, so we can give Matt some accolades here.
Yeah, he's, and I think I circulated, so this next resolution is for our Director of Rackets, Matt Evans, who's been with us for over a year now, running both the paddle and tennis programs. I sent you some of those permit numbers, and the permits have really rebounded very nicely, actually an all-time high for the tennis, and just really rebounded nicely. And of course, now he's taken on the pickleball, and that is, it's really been creative. And he works with both Stephen and I. And again, this is absolutely another cost-effective alternative for the village. As opposed to having a full-time recreation person on staff, we have the Director of Rackets who's receives no benefits from the village, provides his own insurance, simply uses our facilities. In exchange, he receives a monthly payment from us, and makes much of his revenue through providing lessons, of which the village also receives a percentage of that. But he's been really well received nothing but positive comments, really respectful, very energetic, right, Stephen? And he really took the pickleball right on, and he keeps track of, quite frankly, any improvements that we need to make at the tennis or paddle facility. So we're quite excited about his potential to expand the paddle program too. Remember, both of these took such a hit at one point during COVID, but people clearly want to get out, and he's harnessing that.
Did you win the pickleball tournament?
I know. I gotta get into this pickleball ASAP. Yeah.
Did you play?
No.
No. Mary Ann?
Marianne went pro.
Yeah, he vaulted right out of that league, right? Yeah.
She can't play in the amateur league anymore.
I'll just say, coincidentally, my wife and I happened to have dinner with a fairly avid tennis player in the village who's also picked up pickleball, and who also happens to be a member of a private establishment which also offers pickleball. But his comment was that the quality of the pickleball courts in the village were actually better than the private facility where he's a member, at presumably a higher cost than membership in our village courts is. But he wanted to compliment, he just told me that he thought the pickleball program was great. He'd attended a couple of clinics. There seemed to be a lot of people showing up, had nothing but positive things to say about Mr. Evans. I didn't even appreciate at the time that this particular resolution was coming up, but it couldn't have been a better accolade for the program and for some of the quality of our pickleball facilities.
And thank you, Stephen Shallow, for that, too. You have been the pickleball czar.
liaison, so.
Interesting.
All right, then do we have a motion to authorize the professional services agreement with Matt Evans?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All righty. And this is, we discussed earlier, there was some public comment on, we had to do a sewer remediation project, kind of at an emergency level, frankly, at Tanglewild and Garden. And this is basically, would you say, to just fund, where the work has been done, correct?
Right,
And
right,
then
we're
we're just paying for it.
Right, exactly, authorizing the use of the debt service.
Yeah.
And the board had set aside, again, we have a substantial set of money set aside for, through the issuance of debt in 2020 for the purposes of these kind of sanitary sewer repairs, so, yep.
All right, so do I have someone to authorize us to fund to pay for this remediation work?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then, this is just, in the course of things we need around village, taking care of things in the village, this is would authorize the purchase and funding of a tire changer for our DPW garage at a cost of $10,960.
Right, and again, this is coming before you because we didn't have it on a list of capital projects, but it would absolutely is considered a capital project, and rather than taking this out of the operating budget, we're recommending that we use some of the unassigned fund balance. It's a small amount to come from the unassigned fund balance. That makes the most sense.
All right, so do I have a motion to fund the new purchase for and a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and yes, and the next item is just the board adopting this policy again to just reaffirm our internal controls on when we do add new vendors, that there is a process for that, and we have a vendor forum, and we require certain IRS documentation back, and then it's sent to me for approval, so staff can't just start adding vendors to.
Okay.
So
Jim,
checks
does
and balances.
Yeah, is there a resolution for this? Is this something that you'd like a board resolution on as opposed to simply adapting as a matter of policy?
So, I'm sorry, so, the resolution would basically would be adopting this policy as set forth by the treasurer.
Okay, so it would be in the resolution form is what Trustee
Yes, yes.
Fredericks is asking. All right, then do I have someone to move that?
So moved.
And I'll second it. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, and then our next one is accepting the state grant for our Route 22 sidewalk, crosswalk, and related improvements. And this was a grant of $170,000 for the installation of these sidewalks and crosswalks. And we have our state senator, Shelley Mayer, to thank for really advocating for us. She understands the importance of walkability. She's been a real champion on this issue for us, and I did call her personally to thank her on behalf of all of us, but I wanted to publicly thank her and tell the community that we got this very sizable grant to do this walkability project, thanks to Senator Mayer.
I think Mayor Marvin, it's also worthy to note that Senator Mayer sorry, State Senator Shelley Mayer was also very instrumental in getting the project approved at the state level as well. She helped us with
Yes.
that. We
Good
noted that
point.
before, and then she followed it up with a grant.
That's a good point. She advocated for us to even get to the point where we could use the money.
She knew about the project, she was involved with the project, he helped us get the project approved, and then fought for the grant for us.
Point well taken. All right, so who would like to move to accept $170,000? This is,
Well, this is a tough one.
yeah, this is,
We all will move it?
yeah. All right, who would like to move it?
I'll move.
All right, and a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then this is the question, I know we had some very nice neighbors who came down to discuss this issue for the sidewalk, crosswalk, and the related improvements. And I don't know if anybody wants to make further comment. I think their points, I think we all listened, and you know, as we mentioned, perhaps going forward, anything, we can't assume people know this information, and so I think we have to reach out even more directly when we do things. But I did very much appreciate your point, Trustee Behrens, that our newsletter has turned into such a good vehicle for learning about what we did, what we're talking about, what we're going to talk about. But that being said, we just have to keep doing as best a job we can with our neighbors.
Yeah.
I thought many of their points were extremely well taken, but I have to say, in my view, it's the start of what I think is going to be a wonderful project, and we're relying on professional engineers, and my view would be to start undertaking our next step in walkability. Yeah.
I'd like to join in the mayor's comments in that regard, and also add that although we could have certainly done a better job in contacting these two residents, there was very considerable resident involvement in this project from the very outset. I think Ann Jenks in particular deserves a shout out for having mobilized a lot of neighbor support. I think collecting a petition, which she presented to you, Mayor, I don't know whether it was 2 years ago, it was some time ago, to get this process started. And Ms. Jenks, Andrew Langhoff, there are several others whose names I'm omitting. Maybe Trustee Barron's memory.
Chip Schultz.
Yeah, Chip.
Yep, Chip. So sometimes when you get involved with some residents, you overlook other residents that you might have involved. But I think that we should thank those involved residents for their contribution. Much appreciated. And I was just going to ask Mr. Palmer to comment with regard to some of these liability concerns. Could you comment as to the quality of the contractor that you think we have retained in terms of, when a new sidewalk goes in, are you satisfied that we have a contractor who's going to install a sidewalk of quality and hopefully some reasonable durability, so that we aren't going to start having maintenance and heaving problems next year? If you could just comment for the public as to the vetting process with the contractor.
Yeah, no, the low bidder is exceptionally qualified. This is the work that they do. We've used them on other projects, and I think it's worth emphasizing that he's going to be constructing it pursuant to specifications that were carefully, thoughtfully designed by the Westchester County Planning Department staff that does specifically this kind of design work. So it was real careful, and it was reviewed. The designs were reviewed and vetted by the New York State Department of Transportation multiple times. So there are a lot of eyes on it. So the point is the specifications are all real clear. The bids were all competitive, but the low bidder, we've absolutely used for multiple projects, and he's exceptionally qualified and recommended actually by the county. Yeah.
Do they warranty that, the work that they do for a certain period, or?
We'll have, there'll be a maintenance bond associated with that work, yep.
I think
Or
also,
years.
just to add, Ann Jenks and some of the neighbors, we have to remember, they brought forward a list of residents who really wanted this, and I know it was upwards of 100 names on the list that Ann presented. And I also think it's important to tell our audience that every one of us knew these kinds of things are not in our skill sets, and we're doing this on the advice of, frankly, we hired professionals, we had the county professionals involved, private ones that we paid for, and the state of New York DOT. So this has been done.
And I think that really helped, as one of the residents was making the point about the staging of things in terms of, what is more important or less important, or what should be done now and what should be done in the future. I think people have a lot of their own opinions on those kind of matters, but having that professional there who could really look across the entire village and opine with their best opinion on that, I think gives us a lot of comfort.
And one final point, the mayor's comment about the roughly 100 or so residents, I think that accords with my recollection of the order of magnitude of signatures that Ms. Jenks and others collected. I think it's important to note that that list included people on both sides of Route 22, because there are people on the westerly side of Route 22 who enjoy walking to the nature preserve, walking to Siwanoy, just getting an afternoon constitutional, so that, again, although we have often talked about it in terms of making a safe way to transit Route 22 from the east to the west for kids who want to take their kids to school, I include myself in that number of people who just enjoy walking around the neighborhood. And she went out and got the proof in the form of signatures that people on the west side would like to be able to cross to the east, as well as vice versa. So I just wanted to note that, Mayor. Thank you.
And also, Mayor, I'd say that this is the linchpin to the whole Safe Streets initiative.
Exactly.
It started with this route, and the crosswalk is the initial linchpin. Without this, we don't have it. So I think, the consultants have conferred that this is the right place to put it, and this is the right place, and these are the avenues to school.
So are we going to discuss now or at the next, on the next resolution about the Duesenberry to South part?
Right, so that would be my question for you. So you have, the resolution that you have before you is to award the project as bid to the low bidder Landy Contracting from Duesenberry to Paddington. I don't know if you want to approve simply that, or we don't, or do you want to approve?
The cost of the $214,670 is for Duesenberry to Paddington.
Correct.
And the additional cost to go from from Duesenberry to South is how much, Jim?
I didn't receive that estimate. I didn't receive that price yet.
I thought you gave us some figure, didn't you?
I did. I estimated on
yeah.
approximately 250,000. It'd be approximately 100,000, but an additional $100,000. But I did not. I didn't hear back from the contractor on that today. If you wanted to pursue that, we could certainly amend this resolution to include authorizing the construction of the additional 250 feet, dependent on the cost and sufficient funding on what we now have available to us. That's up to you.
I would recommend that. I just think that the crosswalk is so important, and to be able to provide that benefit to the people on on that side of Duesenberry is very important. As someone who grew up on Elm Lane and was constantly running back and forth, that we did not go to Tanglewile.
Yeah.
That it was a street that was not seen as desirable or safe or easy access to either the school or downtown. So I just think it would be a very strong benefit to that entire neighborhood to extend the sidewalk, at what seems a reasonable price,
Right.
and better to do it now than
Right, and
later.
While they're there,
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, and I only qualify that with, yes, pending funding, but I suspect the price will be competitive, because again, the contractor will already be mobilized. This is Landy Contracting, his price is very competitive. As I said, it's approximately 250 feet of sidewalk, so based on his other unit prices, it should be approximately $100,000, but I'm hoping he can be a little bit more competitive on his mobilization fee, since he's already gonna be there. So I think if you wanted to go that route, simply amending the existing resolution to, again, authorize the construction of the additional 250 feet from Dusenberry to South Road, contingent on contractors' funding being available, contingent on receipt of contractors' price for the work, and that sufficient funding is currently available between what you approved and the sampling.
I think it makes sense. He's already there. We couldn't possibly get to mobilize a completely different project just seems wasteful.
No, I agree as well, but Jim, is your amendment consistent with price being still subject to sort of final review and approval by the board, or I guess why don't we go ahead and approve that resolution, but if the village administrator has concerns about any actual bid, of course, I would say we also authorize you in your discretion to put the brakes on the process in order to negotiate a better price.
Duly noted, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Fine.
We're there.
Resolution as amended, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then, do I have, sorry, Helen.
No, I was gonna.
So do I then, Helen just moved it, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Congratulations to all of you all who've worked so hard on this.
Well, and
Yeah.
to you, Helen,
you all
and
know.
the mayor as well, and
And Jenks for getting this
Yeah.
started.
Yes.
And the
lots of
mayor-
thanks.
And Senator Mayor. for-
Yes.
Yes,
Helping push
she,
it through.
and you're right, and she was terrific, and she was absolutely most helpful in getting the,
Yeah.
no disrespect to New York State Department of Transportation, but getting them specifically to move and to define that they were requiring that sidewalk on the east side was,
Yeah, and Jim, just so viewers understand, we have the same issue in terms of getting the equipment. So the goal is to move expeditiously on this, but the reasonable case installation date, in your view, would be what, just so residents know?
with your improvement right now, the goal will be, the contractor did say he was prepared to mobilize, so we can get the sidewalks in before winter. And I, quite frankly, I expressed this to the residents that were here early, and I apologize to them as well. I was so focused on the lead time for some of these items. So we can get the sidewalks in. What I don't have a date for is the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, but we can certainly get the sidewalks in before the end of the year, that's for sure, and footings.
Okay, so if it's not there immediately, it's not because we don't have the orders in place, so residents may have to wait a little while,
Yeah.
but we're moving with all speed that we can.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
they will see work taking place by next month, yeah, that's real positive.
Great, thank you.
All right, then, do I have a motion to award the bid?
Oh, I think,
Have I done that? I
get
just
the
wondered.
first and the second?
Even
Yes.
as
As
amended?
amended.
As amended, so I'm all set with the as amended. Okay. All righty, then, Mr. Palmer, do you want to talk about taking some of our ARPA funds?
Yes, and this is really just a housekeeping
Right.
item, since we had previously identified that we were going to be using the some of the ARPA monies for the improvements at the Midland Pondfield intersection. So we're just clarifying that this money is going to be going from, using the ARPA monies and then going from the general fund to the capital fund as a transfer.
I mean, I was thinking this over, and I mean, there's no better spot in the village. Every single villager uses the corner of Midland and Pondfield. So if we're going to use funds, this, to me, is the ideal project as it benefits every single resident. So,
Right. And I think I provided you that list of how we're using our ARPA money. So, again, for the public's edification, we received 2 ARPA payments. The first, this is the, what's ARPA called again? The American Rescue
Plan.
Recovery Plan. And we received 2 payments. The first one was on or about July 30th of last year, and the second was on or about the end of July this year. And the board had utilized these monies for much-needed capital projects. So the treasurer's been great at responding to the ARPA requirements for our filing deadlines and so forth.
What was the total again, Jim, of those 2 payments?
Just over 650,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right, then do I have a motion to transfer our ARPA money for this project?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then this next resolution just makes so much sense to me. It's Mr. Palmer, if I'm sort of improvising, it's sort of having an engineering firm kind of on call, on retainer for our ongoing sewer improvement projects, so that we just keep this moving. And this includes a project that we have under discussion on Wood End Lane as well.
Right, and as we, I think, talked about one of the previous meetings, when we were talking about resolutions for outside consultants, we, of course, are always doing due diligence on our outside professional consulting services. Even though they're not subject to competitive bidding requirements, we still want to provide the best service to the taxpayer. And again, we've been utilizing this firm. We've utilized them a lot this past year for both our stormwater work, as you know, trying to remediate those flood-prone areas. And then, of course, PCI has been helping us with the complexities of the Wood End sewer and our rest of our sewer rehabilitation. So, so I absolutely recommend that we continue utilizing them. They've proven their value, and using them on an as-needed basis is cost-effective. And they have also been assisting us with submitting the applications for our reimbursement of our grants that we got through the Environmental Facilities Corporation, EFC.
All right, then do
I would just say, as a new trustee, I think I have found them to be very professional and very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And I think, quite frankly, we're lucky to have them.
I
Agreed.
couldn't agree more.
So they do all the sewer systems, the sanitary, the storm, the,
Yeah, they had always done the sanitary, and as the storms become more complex, yes, we've pulled them in to assist with some of that work. Yep, absolutely. We focus on those.
So then I just need a motion to continue their services to the village.
So moved.
And a second.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, the next we had on our agenda scheduling 2 public hearings, and during our public work session, the board unanimously decided to, concerning our one about the tree ordinance, we have every intention, just to inform the public, of having a tree ordinance for the village. It's a major, important change for the village, and we all looked at the current model draft law, and and frankly thought we could tighten it, maybe make it a little more reader-friendly. Am I
Yeah,
being
but more streamlined.
more
Yeah.
streamlined, just a little easier for residents to understand and know when it's triggered. So we want to get this done, but, you know, as they say, we didn't want to substitute speed for accuracy. So we are going to pull the scheduled public hearing for the ordinance as currently written, and we're going to work on it as a board, and we invite the public for input while we kind of craft the law to the point where we even like it better, for want of a better way of saying it. So that item will be
So I'll work to schedule a work session, and just so we can discuss that one evening, and of course, I'll invite members from the subcommittee of the Green Committee, if you will.
exactly.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And then,
All right, I'll poll you all for availability
Right.
over the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
absolutely. So we will have a public hearing just to get it right.
It's just, I think, and you were mentioning that the public hearing would be hopefully before the end of the year, not.
Oh,
not-
absolutely.
Not pushed off into the indefinite future, but
Good point.
in the next
Good
month.
point.
So Mary Ann, so we'll table that, and we'll work on scheduling the work session in lieu of setting the date for the public hearing.
That's fine, but the next resolution, that's local law 6-22, should change that to 5.
It would change the number.
Yeah, it will change the number for this in order. So it should be the next one, if we're gonna table that on the trees, the next one should be local law 5.
Do we need to have that set at this point in time, that number, or?
Well, no, but if you're gonna schedule, I guess I could do what we do with the notice, I could change that to local law 5.
I think if we vote to schedule a public hearing on the next item, it does change the potential local law number. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and the next one, just a little background. This is to schedule a public hearing for consideration of a village-wide 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. Currently, and this bill was put in and championed by our state legislator, Amy Paulin. Many people have asked in the village, just point of background, which was new to me before I took this job. Prior to this, no community could drop their speed limit below 30 unless it was a school zone or you demonstrated a particular street or intersection that, frankly, you had to demonstrate accidents before you could lower the speed limit. And so, frankly, Legislator Paulin, a lot of her communities had asked her over the years to put this through, and this year the law did get passed and signed by the governor. So we're scheduling a public hearing because we want to hear what people in the village think, pros and cons of doing this in our village. I know several other villages have done it already, but frankly, in the next 30 days, we'd like to hear from you on your thoughts of lowering the speed limit in the village to 25.
Except for Route 22.
Right, Mayor, 22 would still stay at 30 because that's a state road.
That's a good point. I always forget we have one state road which we don't have authority over. Thank you.
I just add that when news of this bill began to circulate, I think some of us on the board had occasion to start looking at some of the literature on this, and without prejudicing our position, the main arguments that resonated with me in those jurisdictions which have passed it is that even though it may not get everyone to drive at 25 miles per hour, much as the existing 30 mile per hour speed limit does not get everyone to drive at 30 miles per hour, it has been shown to significantly reduce the number of people who drive at 35 to 40 miles per hour. And that's not just an arbitrary number. If you're hit by a car at 35 miles per hour or above, your chances of being killed or seriously harmed are significantly greater than if you're hit at a speed of less than 30 miles per hour. So these aren't just arbitrary numbers. Some of these numbers are really geared towards really getting traffic to move at a less lethal rather than more lethal level. Obviously, the worst can occur, the best can occur at different speeds, but that struck me as very, very important. And I think it also is part of the walkability initiative that we've discussed. We heard from residents today, and we've heard from Mr. Palmer today, that sidewalks in front of people's properties are something we don't install lightly. And part of it is, it does add to residents' burdens in some respect, but also it's very expensive. And I think we like having a bucolic feel to a lot of our streets, and there are some streets where safe routes will continue to be walking in the street, and there'll be more that's available from Jim Palmer as to how the safe routes to school. We'll have striping on streets and other things short of sidewalks that signal to people safety. But in my view at this time, having a general tone of taking it down just a slight notch in speeds is going to be helpful, because whatever we do, Mayor, over the next 5 or 10 years, there's still going to be a fair amount of pedestrian traffic, which by necessity will be people taking an evening perambulation in a street. And again, welcome all comments from the village, but these are some of the things that I think have motivated this drive to begin with.
And of course, it fits exactly in with our Safe Streets initiative, so it could not be more timely from the governor and from the state legislative body.
And quite frankly, and not that we would, but we could have tonight voted up or down on this, but this is one of those things that's incredibly important that we hear from the people who drive in the village, so which is why we're doing it the public hearing route.
And Mayor, this is a little off topic, but since it's been a while since we've had a regularly scheduled sort of second Monday of the month meeting, you, Mayor, were kind enough to organize a meeting with Representative Paulin that Trustee Knapp and I were also able to attend, and I think we probably should note somewhere our thanks to Representative Paulin for scheduling that. It was a nice opportunity to have a dialogue with her, and thank you, Mayor, for helping arrange that.
All righty, so do I have someone that would be scheduling the public hearing for consideration of a village-wide 25 mile per hour speed limit? And the hearing would be at our next meeting, which is October 11th.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I would just make a note, October 11th is a Tuesday due to the Columbus weekend, long
That's-
weekend on
that's
October
right.
10th.
Thank you.
Yes, we have changed all of our meetings. If the Monday is a federal holiday, it automatically goes to the Tuesday. Trustees, did we forget anything tonight before I open it to? No. We have to be thinking, in this board too, the village, the school is turning 100 this year, and the village turns 125 I believe, next year. So if anyone has any ideas how we can celebrate our village birthday, I'd love your ideas, your help, anything. So just be thinking about it, because planning for any kind of event has to start early. So, and now I open it up. If anyone in the public who would like to discuss anything, now is your time. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is David Stern. I moved to Bronxville 12 years ago, and I was entranced by, it almost seemed time warp. I was stepping back into the 1950s. Cars stopped as you tried to cross the street. Everybody said hello to everybody else, good morning. And it was enchanting. And so we've had to figure out how to find a place to live here. And we live in a co-op on 25 Sagamore. I am vice president of the Bronxville Rotary, but I'm not here in that capacity. You guys ruined my evening because I came here to thank you for one thing, and now I have to thank you for a lot of things.
Oh, we'll listen.
I came to thank the trustees and Jim for the wonderful job they did in enhancing the safety of the crosswalks.
Yeah.
I've seen it already, which is pretty remarkable. The increased signage, people are stopping. Not everybody, but a lot more people are. I was concerned about this in June when I saw 3 seniors, I'm a senior, in an animated conversation in front of Apple Bank. And they were sort of very unhappy about what they felt that streets were no longer safe to cross Pondfield. And I think what the initiative you've done has made dramatic changes and improved the quality of life. I have to confess, I'm involved with the Rutgers School of Social Work, and they're Thursday doing a whole thing on creating more age-friendly communities. And I thought I was going to bring back to us all the wonderful things they're doing. I now realize I have to bring to them all the things you guys are doing. I think the initiative on Route 22, I just became aware of the study that was done almost a year ago about creating a safe community, and it's really heartening to see how much of that you've begun to implement. And I'm grateful to live in this village, and I'm grateful to have the kind of leadership that all of you have exemplified. I attended multiple in my previous life community board meetings in New York City. They can learn a lot from you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And please come every month.
A nice way to.
Okay. Oh, on that, thank you. On that lovely note, do I have a motion to close our meeting?
So moved.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Then we'll see everyone Tuesday, October 11th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.